No one in the town could remember when the grove first appeared. The oldest maps showed only an empty hill at the town's northern edge. Yet every generation remembered the same cluster of black, lifeless trees standing there. Their trunks were twisted like broken bones. Their branches reached into the sky like hundreds of pleading hands, and not a single leaf had ever grown on them. Children asked why the trees were dead. Their parents never answered. Instead, they simply said, "Stay away from the grove after sunset." Even the animals obeyed that warning. Dogs stopped barking whenever they came near it. Horses refused to walk along the nearby road. Birds circled high overhead but never landed among the branches. If a rabbit accidentally ran toward the grove, it would suddenly change direction, as if it had sensed a predator no human could see. The silence there was unnatural. There were no insects, no chirping birds, no rustling leaves. Even the wind seemed to die before reaching the trees. The townspeople believed the grove itself was alive, not because it moved, but because it watched. Every evening, before darkness settled over the town, people hurried indoors and locked their doors. Curtains were drawn tightly over every window facing the grove. Children learned this habit before they learned to read. No one questioned it anymore. Then there was the crow. No one knew where it had come from. No one had ever seen it hatch. No one had ever found a nest. It had simply always been there. Every dawn it perched upon the tallest dead tree, perfectly still, could remain motionless for hours, sometimes entire days. People often mistook it for part of the tree until the crimson light from its eye slowly swept across the ground like a searching lantern. That was when they realized it had been watching them all along. The creature was far larger than any ordinary crow. Its feathers were darker than charcoal, swallowing the morning light around them. One side of its head looked almost normal except for a glowing scarlet eye that shone like burning glass. The other half was stripped to bare bone. The skull grinned permanently. Its empty socket never blinked. Yet somehow everyone who looked at it felt that unseen eye staring directly back. Its wings stretched farther than a man's height. Whenever they unfolded, the ends revealed pale skeletal fingers instead of feathers. 5 long human-like bones extended from each wingtip. Those fingers slowly flexed, curled, opened, then gripped the branches like hands climbing a wall. Its legs were strangely short and thick. Instead of hopping like a crow, it waddled slowly like a penguin. That awkward movement somehow made it even more terrifying, because when it wanted to, stopped waddling, and began running. No one who had witnessed it running had ever described it the same way. Some said it moved like a spider. Others insisted it floated inches above the ground. One man claimed it never actually moved at all, that the world simply became closer to it. The townspeople never argued. Every description ended the same way. I ran. For decades, the creature rarely left the grove. It simply watched, waiting. Then strange things began happening. Children started waking in the middle of the night, insisting someone had been softly calling their names outside their windows. Parents searched every street. No one was there. The voice always belonged to a little girl. Gentle, sweet, almost comforting. Sometimes it laughed quietly between each sentence. Other times it cried. Some children begged their parents to open the front door because they believed a lost girl needed help. No parent ever did. Those who had grown up in town knew better. The old people said the voice did not belong to a child. It belonged to the crow. No one believed that until the Miller family disappeared. It happened during the coldest winter the town had ever known. Neighbors awoke to find the Millers' front door standing open. A trail of black feathers covered the snow. Inside the house, everything remained exactly where it had been the night before. Bowls of soup still sat warm upon the table. A kettle still boiled over the fire. The youngest child's toy lay in the middle of the floor. There were no signs of violence. No blood. No footprints leading away. Only hundreds of black feathers. The entire family had vanished. Search parties combed the nearby forests for weeks. Nothing. Not even bones. The sheriff eventually ordered the search to stop. He never explained why. Years later, after retiring, he admitted the truth. The search had reached the dead grove on its second day. Every tree had someone's name carved into its trunk. Thousands of names. Some belonged to people still living. Others belonged to those who had disappeared over the last century. Near the center stood one freshly carved tree. 5 names had appeared overnight. One man claimed it never actually moved at all, that the world simply became closer to it. The townspeople never argued. Every description ended the same way. I ran. For decades, the creature rarely left the grove. It simply watched, waiting. Then strange things began happening. Children started waking in the middle of the night, insisting someone had been softly calling their names outside their windows. Parents searched every street. No one was there. The voice always belonged to a little girl. Gentle, sweet, almost comforting. Sometimes it laughed quietly between each sentence. Other times it cried. Some children begged their parents to open the front door because they believed a lost girl needed help. No parent ever did. Those who had grown up in town knew better. The old people said the voice did not belong to a child. It belonged to the crow. No one believed that until the Miller family disappeared. It happened during the coldest winter the town had ever known. Neighbors awoke to find the Millers' front door standing open. A trail of black feathers covered the snow. Inside the house, everything remained exactly where it had been the night before. Bowls of soup still sat warm upon the table. A kettle still boiled over the fire. The youngest child's toy lay in the middle of the floor. There were no signs of violence. No blood. No footprints leading away. Only hundreds of black feathers. The entire family had vanished. Search parties combed the nearby forests for weeks. Nothing. Not even bones. The sheriff eventually ordered the search to stop. He never explained why. Years later, after retiring, he admitted the truth. The search had reached the dead grove on its second day. Every tree had someone's name carved into its trunk. Thousands of names. Some belonged to people still living. Others belonged to those who had disappeared over the last century. Near the center stood one freshly carved tree. 5 names had appeared overnight. Every member of the Miller family. The sheriff never returned. Neither did any member of the search party. From that day onward, the townspeople made one final rule. Never speak anyone's name aloud after sunset, because the crow was always listening. After the disappearance of the Miller family, the town changed forever. People stopped walking alone after sunset. Children were forbidden from playing outside once the church bell rang 6 times. The road leading toward the dead grove slowly disappeared beneath weeds because no one dared use it anymore. Even strangers passing through the town noticed something was wrong. Every house had thick curtains covering the windows facing the grove. Every front door had an iron bell hanging above it. And every family kept a small bowl of salt beside the entrance. When travelers asked why, no one answered. They only replied with the same warning. If you hear someone calling your name tonight, pretend you didn't. One rainy evening, a traveling salesman named Victor arrived in town. He laughed when the innkeeper warned him about the grove. I've slept in abandoned castles, Victor boasted. I've crossed graveyards after midnight. I'm not afraid of old stories. The innkeeper's smile disappeared. Those stories never learned your name. Victor frowned. What does that mean? The old man stared toward the black forest outside the window. It already knows you're here. At exactly midnight, Victor awoke. Someone was knocking softly on his bedroom window. Tap, tap, tap. He looked outside. Nothing. Rain poured across the empty street. Then he heard it. A little girl, barely louder than a whisper. Victor! He froze. The voice came again. Gentle, almost loving. Victor, please. He slowly approached the window. The street remained empty. Then the voice whispered again. I'm cold. Victor unlocked the window. The instant it opened, the knocking stopped. The rain stopped. Even the wind disappeared. The town fell into complete silence. Far away, a crimson light slowly appeared between the dead trees. Victor stared toward it. The red light blinked once, then vanished. He shut the window immediately. The next morning he packed his belongings and left town before sunrise. 30 kilometers down the highway, police found his abandoned truck. The engine was still running. His wallet remained on the seat. His luggage was untouched. Victor himself was never seen again. That same year, the town priest decided enough was enough. He believed fear had become stronger than faith. Gathering a group of volunteers, he announced that they would enter the grove together at dawn to bless the land. Nearly everyone begged him not to go. The priest refused. "If evil truly lives there," he said, "then hiding from it only feeds it." At sunrise, 12 people followed him into the grove. Hundreds of townspeople watched from a safe distance. The forest swallowed them. Minutes passed, then an hour. No one returned. Finally, the church bell began ringing. No one was inside the church. Yet the bell continued. Once, twice, again and again. 12 times. Then silence. A search party entered before noon. They found every volunteer standing beneath a different dead tree. Each person was alive. Each person stood perfectly still, eyes wide open, smiling. No matter what anyone said, none of them moved. Doctors examined them. Their hearts beat normally. Their lungs breathed. Their eyes followed movement. But they never blinked, never spoke, never ate. Within 3 days, every one of them turned into black ash. Only piles of feathers remained. The priest's wooden cross was discovered weeks later. It hung from one of the grove's highest branches. No one climbed up to retrieve it. Years passed. Disappearances continued. Sometimes only one person vanished. Sometimes entire families disappeared overnight. The pattern never made sense. Young, old, rich, poor. The crow chose whoever it wanted. Or perhaps, whoever it had already chosen long before they were born. One autumn afternoon, 2 brothers, Daniel and Owen, dared each other to enter the grove. They were 16, young enough to think courage meant ignoring danger. They carried flashlights, cameras, and hunting knives. Daniel laughed. "If that crow exists, we'll finally prove everyone wrong." The deeper they walked, the colder the air became. Soon they noticed something strange. The trees cast shadows, but the sun stood directly overhead. Even stranger, every shadow pointed toward the center of the grove, as if the darkness itself wanted them to keep walking. Then they found footprints, hundreds of them, bare human footprints, children's footprints, animal tracks, all heading inward, none leading back out. Daniel's smile disappeared. Owen whispered, "Let's leave." Before either could move, a girl's laughter echoed above them, soft, playful. The brothers looked up. The monstrous crow stood silently on a branch only a few meters away. It hadn't flown there. It was simply there. Its crimson eye slowly opened. A thin beam of red light swept across the forest. The skeletal fingers at the ends of its wings tightened around the branch. Crack, crack, crack. The wood splintered beneath its grip. The crow tilted its head. Its normal beak never opened. Instead, the exposed skull split apart. A second mouth appeared inside the bone. Small, human, smiling. Then came the voice. Not one voice. Hundreds. Children. Old women. Men. All speaking together. "Daniel! Owen! We've been waiting!" The brothers screamed and ran. Behind them echoed slow footsteps. Not wings. Not claws. Footsteps. Like dozens of barefoot children calmly following them through the trees. Daniel looked back only once. The crow wasn't flying. It wasn't walking. It was dragging itself upside down across the branches using the bony hands at the ends of its wings, moving with impossible speed while its short legs dangled beneath its body. This glowing I never blinked. The smile grew wider. The brothers burst out of the grove just before sunset. Only Owen reached the road. Daniel was gone. There had been no scream, no struggle. He had simply vanished between 2 trees. Search parties never found him. But every night afterward, Owen heard his brother's voice outside his bedroom, softly knocking, begging to be let in. The voice always ended with the same words. "Owen, Please look outside. I'm standing with the crow. Owen never opened the curtain, but every morning, fresh black feathers covered the ground beneath his window, and every feather had a tiny drop of blood at its tip. After Daniel vanished, no one in town spoke his name again. Not because they had forgotten him, because they were afraid the crow would hear. His mother quietly removed every photograph from the walls of their house. His clothes were burned. His bedroom door remained locked forever. Still, every morning she found muddy footprints leading from the front door to Daniel's room. Only one set, bare human feet. The footprints never led back outside. Weeks later, Owen stopped sleeping. Every night, the whispering began at exactly 3:13 a.m. It always started the same way. 3 gentle knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Then Daniel's voice. Owen, I know you're awake. I just want to come home. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he sounded frightened. But no matter what he said, he always ended with the same sentence. Don't let it see your eyes. Owen never answered. One night, unable to resist, he looked through the keyhole instead of the window. The hallway outside was empty. He sighed with relief. Then, a giant crimson eye slowly opened on the other side of the keyhole. Someone or something had been staring back. The next morning, Owen collapsed in the town square. When people rushed to help him, they found a black feather clenched so tightly in his hand that it had pierced his skin. Carved into the feather's shaft were 2 words. You next. No one knew how it had gotten there. The mayor finally admitted what the town had hidden for generations. There is something beneath the old church. That evening, he gathered the oldest residents, the sheriff, and the last surviving priest. Together they unlocked a rusted trapdoor beneath the church altar. None of the younger townspeople had known it existed. The air below smelled of damp stone and dust. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. At the bottom lay a forgotten chamber. Shelves filled with ancient books lined the walls. Broken crosses, cracked bells, and hundreds of melted candles covered the floor. At the center stood a heavy oak table. Upon it rested a leather journal wrapped in rusted chains. The cover bore no title, only the burned outline of a crow's skull. The old priest unlocked the chains with a key that had been passed from priest to priest for nearly 2 centuries. Inside were handwritten pages. The ink had faded, but the words remained readable. The first page read, If this journal is found after my death, burn it without reading another word. If you continue, the crow will know your face. No one closed the book. The priest continued reading. The journal belonged to Father Elias. The entries began 148 years earlier. The creature is not a crow. It merely wears the shape of one. According to the journal, the dead grove had once been a thriving forest. Children played there every afternoon. Families gathered beneath its shade. Birds nested in every tree. Then, during one unusually cold winter, a stranger arrived. No one knew his name. He carried a black wooden cage covered with cloth. The stranger warned the villagers never to remove the covering. He said what was inside had to remain unseen until he reached the mountains beyond the town. The villagers gave him food and a place to sleep. That night, someone grew curious. A young farmer lifted the cloth. Inside sat an ordinary black crow, or so it seemed. The farmer laughed. He had expected a monster. The crow stared into his eyes, then spoke, in the voice of the farmer's little daughter. "Daddy!" The farmer screamed. By morning, his daughter had disappeared. Only black feathers remained in her bed. The journal continued. Every night afterward, another child vanished. Then adults, then entire families. The villagers hunted the stranger, believing he had cursed them. They found him hanging from one of the forest trees. His body had been torn apart. Above him perched the crow, watching, waiting, smiling. The villagers tried to kill it. Axes shattered. Bullets melted. Fire refused to burn its feathers. One man struck it with a hammer. The crow simply turned its skull toward him. The man exploded into a cloud of black feathers. Nothing else remained. Terrified, the villagers begged Father Elias for help. He spent 30 nights praying inside the forest. On the final night, the crow finally spoke to him, not with a girl's voice, not with hundreds of voices, but with his own, perfectly, every breath, every pause, every word. I am older than your God. I do not kill. I collect. Father Elias asked, "What are you?" The crow answered, "I am the last thing every forgotten soul remembers." Then it opened its wings. The skeletal hands stretched outward. Every dead tree around them began to split open. Inside each trunk stood people, thousands of them. Some were centuries old. Some looked freshly taken. None had eyes. All were silently smiling. Father Elias wrote, "The trees are not trees. They are prisons. Every trunk grows around a stolen soul. Every branch is a bone. Every root is a spine buried beneath the earth." The final pages became frantic. The handwriting shook violently. Ink stained every corner. One sentence appeared again and again. "It is growing. It is growing. It is growing." Then came the last entry. "The crow cannot enter the town. It does not need to. If enough people learn its story, they begin dreaming of the grove. Dreams become footsteps. Footsteps become disappearances. When the final tree grows, it will no longer remain inside the forest." The journal ended there. No signature, no explanation. Only one fresh black feather lay between the final pages. It was still wet, as though it had been placed there only moments before. The old priest slowly closed the journal. His hands were trembling. "We have made a terrible mistake," he whispered. The mayor frowned. "What mistake?" The priest looked around the chamber. Every candle had gone out. The room was silent. Then, from somewhere above the church, a soft little girl's voice echoed through the ceiling. It quietly spoke the names of everyone standing in the chamber, one by one, by one. And when the last name was spoken, something enormous landed on the roof. The entire church shook beneath its weight. Outside, every dog in town began to howl. At exactly the same moment, no one dared open the church doors, because they already knew. The crow had been listening while they read its story. No one inside the church moved. The little girl's voice had stopped. Outside, the town had fallen into complete silence. The old priest slowly made the sign of the cross, but his trembling hand never reached his chest. Another sound echoed across the roof. Thump. It was so heavy that dust drifted from the ceiling. Then another. Thump. The building groaned. Wood cracked. Ancient stained glass windows trembled in their frames. No one breathed. The mayor whispered, "It can't leave the grove." The old priest stared at him with empty eyes. "It already has." Then came the scratching. Not claws. Fingers. Long, dry fingers scraping across the roof. Scratch, scratch, scratch. They moved slowly from one end of the church to the other. Everyone looked upward. Whatever was outside wasn't walking on its feet. It was crawling across the roof with the bony hands at the ends of its wings. The scratching stopped directly above them. Silence. Then, tap. Something knocked once on the ceiling. Tap, tap, 3 knocks. Exactly as Owen had always heard on his bedroom door. A little girl's voice floated through the wood. "May I come in?" No one answered. The voice asked again, sweeter this time. "I'm cold." Still no one spoke. The church bell suddenly rang by itself. Not once, not twice, but 13 times. With the final toll, every candle in the church burst into black flames. The flames gave no warmth. Instead, the room grew colder. People could see their own breath. One by one, they noticed something horrifying. Their shadows no longer matched their movements. While the people stood frozen, their shadows slowly turned toward the church doors, as if something outside was calling to them. Without warning, a deafening crack echoed through the town. Everyone rushed to the windows. What they saw stole every word from their mouths. The dead grove was moving, not the crow. The trees, one by one, the lifeless trunks tore themselves from the earth. Their roots dangled beneath them like hundreds of pale, twisting legs. The sound was unbearable. Wood groaning, roots snapping, wet earth being ripped apart. The trees did not run. They walked, slowly, silently, every step left behind deep holes in the ground, as if graves had been opened. The entire forest was marching toward the town. Panic spread instantly. Families slammed shutters closed. Doors were barricaded. Mothers pulled crying children beneath beds. No one dared look outside. Those who did never forgot what they saw. Each walking tree carried faces trapped within its bark. Some screamed silently. Some cried. Some begged for help. Others smiled. One old woman recognized her husband, who had disappeared 30 years earlier. His face slowly turned toward her. His lips moved. Though she could not hear him through the glass, she knew exactly what he was saying. "Open the door." She did. The neighbors heard only one scream. When they forced the door open the next morning, the house was empty. A trail of black feathers stretched into the darkness. Meanwhile, Owen remained inside the church with the others. The old priest opened the journal once more. A page that had been blank before now held fresh writing. The ink looked wet. No one had touched it. The words slowly appeared on their own. "You read my story. Now you belong to it." Before anyone could react, another sentence carved itself into the page. "Look behind you." Everyone resisted. Everyone, except the mayor. Slowly, against his own will, he turned around. Standing at the far end of the church was a little girl. She wore a faded white dress. Her long black hair covered her face. She stood perfectly still. "Are you lost?" the mayor whispered. The girl lifted her head. There was no face, only a smooth sheet of black feathers where her features should have been. She opened her tiny mouth. Instead of a child's voice, the entire church filled with the deafening caw of thousands of crows. The stained glass windows exploded inward. Dark feathers swirled through the air like a storm. When everyone opened their eyes again, the girl was gone. The mayor was gone. Only his shoes remained, still standing upright, as though he had vanished from inside them. Outside, the first walking tree reached the town square. Its roots dug into the stone streets. The ground split apart. Black cracks spread in every direction. From those cracks came pale human hands. Hundreds of them. They clawed at the air, trying to pull themselves free. Then came the whispering. Thousands of voices speaking at once. Every voice belonged to someone the townspeople had lost. Parents heard dead children calling. Children heard dead parents. Friends heard friends. Lovers heard lovers. Every voice begged to be rescued. Some people could not resist. They ran toward the cracks. The waiting hands seized them instantly. No screams. No struggle. The earth swallowed them whole. The cracks closed as though nothing had happened. High above the town, the monstrous crow spread its impossible wings. Its crimson eye illuminated the streets with a blood-red glow. The skeletal hands at the tips of its wings opened wide. Then, for the first time in living memory, the crow laughed, not like a bird, not like a child. It laughed with every stolen voice it had ever collected. The sound echoed across the town until people covered their ears and fell to their knees. Some bled from their noses, others from their eyes. Several simply stopped moving forever. Then the crow spoke. Every person heard the words inside their own mind. "I did not come for your town. I came for your names." As the red light swept across the terrified streets, hundreds of names slowly appeared, carved into the bark of the walking trees. Some belonged to people who were still alive. Some belonged to children sleeping peacefully in their beds. Others belonged to babies who had not even been born yet. And every time a new name appeared, a fresh branch grew from the nearest dead tree. The grove was no longer just a place. It was spreading. And before dawn, every person in the town understood the horrifying truth. The crow had never been guarding the dead grove. The dead grove had been growing the crow's kingdom. And this was only the beginning.